Hi, Elaine here from markergeek.com. I've got another Stamping Bella video for you today, showing how I created this card using one of the new Tiny Townie butterfly girls and created a Distress Oxide blended scene for her to stand in. As usual, I stamped my image using MFT Extreme Black ink, as it's a Copic friendly ink. First, I created the mask by stamping on Eclipse masking paper. And then I stamped the image on Make It Colour blending card, ready to colour with my Copic markers. I'm now cutting out the mask. Obviously this is sped up because I wish I could cut masks that fast. Now I'm masking the image, and I've got my non-stick craft mat for doing the Distress Oxide blending. I've got a couple of colours of green, Twisted Citron and Lucky Clover. And as you can see, I didn't quite plan ahead, and actually in truth I rarely do. I started out thinking I was going to create just a loose freehand sort of blended scene moving up into the sky colours after doing the grass, and then I thought actually it would probably work out better if I kind of masked this area before doing the sky, to give it a more defined edge to the grassy hills. So you can see I cut a piece of Eclipse masking paper to use after inking the grass area. I just basically cut it freehand, just in a wavy line, just to give the impression of some grassy hills in the background. When I'm blending the Distress Oxides, I tend to go over the area a couple or a few times just to get a really nice blend. They do blend quite nicely on the Make It Colour blending card, even though it isn't the best paper for using for ink blending. I wanted to prioritise the Copic colouring on this one. I did a card last week featuring the Stamping Bella gnomes where I did the ink blending and the Copic colouring on Strathmore Bristol Smooth Surface, which isn't my favourite for Copic colouring, but it does work beautifully for the Distress Oxide inks. I thought I'd show you the alternative, just to show you that the ink blending does work fairly well on the Make It Colour blending card, so you can give it a go with whatever you have and see how it works for you. You don't always have to have the absolute perfect paper for everything. It does help, but it works quite well to prioritise whatever the focus of your card is going to be. So if it's Copic colouring and you can make the ink blending work on your preferred Copic paper, then that's cool. As you can see, when I'm doing the sky, I chose picked raspberry and squeezed lemonade. And that picked raspberry looks really strong at first, but as I continue and blend and then use the water mister to get that oxidation effect, then it softens and you can see it actually turns out really pretty. And the picked raspberry and the squeezed lemonade blend to make a really pretty orange shade in between. Obviously, because the Make It Colour blending card isn't a watercolour paper, you need to be quite careful with the amount of water that you use. You will get some sort of texture to the paper in areas with the larger water droplets, but it dries back really well and it looks really good. After removing the masks, removing the mask for the hills, I just touched up the tops of them with some extra Twisted Citron where there was a little bit too much of a gap. Then I removed the mask for my image ready to colour. You'll notice that the top of her dress already has some colour on it. That's actually because when I was planning out which colours I was going to use, I mistakenly started colouring on this image instead of on the test image that I had stamped. But that's fine. I just corrected that with a little colourless blender, and it's going to be coloured orange anyway, so it'll be covered over. I've left the colouring portion of the card in this video so that you can see everything. However, I have sped it up significantly, or this video would be extremely long. If you would like to see a closer to real-time version of me colouring this image, you can find that on my channel, and I'll link to it in the description below. For now, I'll pop some music on while I finish the colouring of this and come back to you afterwards. I have so much fun colouring these butterfly girls. And there are so many different possibilities with the wings, as I've mentioned before. I just went for a simple sort of gradient blend here, but you could get a little bit more intricate if you like. I knew, however, that I was going to add some details with a Copic multi-liner and a white gel pen, as you'll see in a minute, so I didn't want things to get too complicated and busy. In a minute, you'll see that I do add some shading to the ground underneath the Tiny Townie. I used a grey marker, as I usually would, just to add a shadow. However, this is on top of the Distress Oxide inks, and so if you are concerned about clogging your marker nibs, because they do have the pigment properties, which say the Distress inks don't, if you're concerned about clogging your marker nibs, then I'd recommend grabbing a pencil or using some ink to create the shadow. I'm not too fussed because I, scribbled off the tip of the nib on a piece of scrap paper afterwards, and I haven't had any problems with this as yet. I'm not too precious about my nibs, as I know I can always replace them, but if it is something that does bother you, then just be aware and maybe choose something else to do this. And now I'm channeling my inner Kelly Latavola and outlining my image to get a really bold black outline. I love it when Kelly does this, it looks really striking. I'm not quite as proficient at it myself just yet. It does require quite a steady hand, especially when doing a fairly detailed image, like the Stamping Bella images tend to have quite a fine detailed outline. So this is something to maybe practice with a little bit if you're not too confident. I ended up cutting out most of the footage of me doing the outlining, as I had to get my head right over it, so my head was blocking the camera for quite a lot of the outlining process. One of the reasons that I outlined the entire image with the multi-liner was that I knew I wanted to add some extra detail and interest into the wings by outlining and adding some varying thicknesses of lines, as well as using the white gel pen. So I didn't want the image to look unbalanced and have these really bold black outlined wings, but not have the black outline for the rest of the image. It's by no means perfect, but it turned out quite well, and I was quite pleased with the result in the end, especially when I went on and added the polka dots with the white gel pen. And it's just another way to add some interest to those wings and to kind of make them your own. You could also do some Zentangling, add some different lines and shapes and things inside the wings. That would be quite fun. When putting my card together, I decided to let the scene really stand on its own, and so all I did was added one of the sentiments from the new birthday sentiment set. I stamped that twice using my Misty, so that it was nice and bold and black against that background. I kept this as a one layer card. It's not really one layer, it's kind of a cheat. I basically just stuck the front piece to a card blank, but that gives the same effect as a one layer card. And then I added some sparkle with some tonic Nouveau glitter drops in White Blizzard, which is the first time I've actually used the Nouveau drops, and I found them quite fun. I liked how they came out. I may very well end up having to get a few more colours, we will see. The card is approximately UK A6 size, which is around 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. And that's it. If you'd like to find out any of the details for any of the products I used, they are over on my blog, which will be linked in the description below. Thank you for joining me today. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you next time.